Hi, my name's Chris and I'm a senior software developer. These days I'm mostly building front-end web apps using ClojureScript to develop apps like Rogel, Beatmaker, Melody Generator, MakeSprite, and making open source contributions. I'm going to show you my tech stack and configs using Vim to work on ClojureScript projects. I'm also using LLMs a bit these days, and you can watch my video on Ada to find out more about that workflow. I'm using the stock standard version of Vim by Bram Moolenaar that ships with Ubuntu, and I'm going to show you 3 plugins I use for editing ClojureScript. Paredit for wrangling braces, Vim Fireplace for interacting with the runtime via the nREPL, and Vim Fugitive for doing Git operations. I'll also show you my own plugin that mods Vim Fireplace to offer some conveniences. I like Vim for its terminal-friendly workflow, the fact that it has a very fast startup time, a minimal and focused UI, it's available when I access a server remotely, and finally it's been around for a long time, so it's mature and stable, with a good ecosystem of plugins. I use a simple setup for Vim plugins, where I can check out the source for the plugin into the .vim bundle subdirectory. A plugin called Pathogen handles loading those plugins one by one from the bundle directory. Let's get started by setting up a simple front-end ClojureScript project. These days I'm increasingly using a ClojureScript interpreter called Skittle. What's great about Skittle is it has no build step. I use Josh to set up a new project, which bootstraps 3 simple files, and then I can launch the dev server. One of the best things about the Clojure development experience is tight integration with your editor. I use a plugin called Paredit for wrangling braces, and I have the paredit.vim source code checked out under .vim bundle, so that gets automatically loaded when I start Vim. Paredit speeds up refactoring and moving code around. So let me start a new form here. As you can see, the closing brace is created automatically. I'll type a print command. Now the first thing you can do is use the parentheses keys to hop to the start and end of a form. Pressing open brace takes me to the start, pressing close brace takes me to the end. I can press it more than once to jump outwards. That helps navigating around the form. The second useful thing is popping braces around. So if I want to move this start brace here, I can jump to the brace with open parentheses, and then I can hit my leader key and the less than sign, and it'll pop over left of the 0. And so that's a good way to work with Clojure forms, moving things around. You can also jump between brackets in visual select mode. I can jump to the end of the form here and then select that final brace. And then I can hold shift and press left parentheses to select the whole form. I can then press the left parentheses again and it'll select the outer form containing that form. And you can go on as high as you want. So right to the level of the function. In this case though, I'm just going to select this inner section here. What I'm going to do is yank that out and then create a new component called component button. I'll define a new function for this component, and then I can paste in what we have in our buffer. And as you can see, that's a very fast way to refactor out some code into a new function. Another feature of Paredit is if I go into visual select mode, press left brace a few times, and then press equals, it'll re-indent that whole block for me. And so that makes tidying things up much quicker. With a larger code base, being able to yank out whole forms like this makes refactoring much faster. There's a lot more to Paredit if you learn the various keystrokes, but those are the main ones I use when refactoring and writing code. Now let's take a look at Vim Fireplace. It's a plugin by Tim Pope that connects to your nREPL and lets you send forms to be evaluated in the runtime. Once you've got Vim Fireplace installed, it'll automatically connect if it finds a .nREPL port file in the current project. It also detects the shadow CLJS equivalent. Once you're connected, you can send forms to the runtime using CLJ eval. And you'll get the result back here. Now I've actually modded Vim Fireplace with my own plugin called Vim Fireplace Eval Popup, and this adds a couple of conveniences to the Fireplace developer experience. The first thing it adds is the ability to evaluate forms and get the result inline. For example, here we've evaluated counter state and we get 5, which is the value of the current counter. If I increment that again, we can run it again and get the next value out. So that's sending this form to the browser runtime and getting the result back and displaying it in the editor. My plugin also binds 2 new key sequences, being CPI, which evaluates the inner form. So in this case, that's PR, STR, at state, and CPO, which evaluates the whole top level form, which in this case is the show state function itself. So if you're inside a function, you can reevaluate just the part you're looking at, or you can evaluate the entire thing to hot load it into the browser. Fireplace has existing mechanisms to do this, but I found them a little bit fiddly, and I wanted a key sequence for evaluating inner and outer forms without changing my cursor position. And so the other plugin I use a lot, also by Tim Pope, is called Vim Fugitive, which is a Git wrapper for Vim. I prefer a terminal-based Git workflow, where I stage files manually myself, git pull and git push, etc. But Fugitive includes a lot of useful commands for working with Git repositories. And probably the one I use the most is for staging partial commits with gvdiff. This is great when you've made some changes, but you don't want to commit the entire file. So we can use diffput to stage this block of code. And let's say we wanted some of this file, but not all of it. We can then select the part we want and again do diffput. And as you can see here, these lines are not staged for commit, whereas these are. So I can right quit in that buffer. And now when I go back to my terminal workflow, I can see that some of main.clj has been added and some of it hasn't. And I can show the parts that are still unstaged with git diff and the parts that are staged with git diff -- cached. And you can see here the parts I added. And so that's my Vim-based workflow for working on ClojureScript projects. I hope that's been useful, and best of luck with your own Vim and ClojureScript adventures. Thanks for watching.